The day my son told me I was dead to him, I felt something collapse inside my chest. Not my heart, something deeper, more fundamental. The foundation that had supported every decision, every sacrifice I'd made for 32 years. "You're dead to me," Michael had said, his voice flat and final, no emotion betraying the weight of those words. "Don't call again. Don't write. Don't show up at my house." I remember standing in my living room, the phone still pressed against my ear even after he'd hung up, the dial tone buzzing like an accusation. Outside, through the picture window I'd installed myself, the Boston skyline glittered in the distance. It was January 2007, and a light snow was falling, coating everything in pristine white. 18 years. That's how long I lived with those words. 18 birthdays, 18 Christmases, 18 Father's Days spent staring at a phone that never rang. 18 years of passing card shops and turning away from the "for my son" section. 18 years of neighbors asking about him, colleagues showing photos of grandchildren, friends inviting me to their children's weddings. "We've lost touch," I'd say with a practiced smile that never reached my eyes. "He's busy with his own life now." The truth was far more painful. The truth was that I'd been excised, cut away like a cancer from my son's life after I refused to fund his fourth attempt at a business venture. After I'd already lost $87,000 on his previous failed startups. After I'd already remortgaged the house his mother and I had worked so hard to buy. His mother. Margaret. She would have known what to do. But cancer took her when Michael was 19, and perhaps that's when the trouble really began. Without her steadying influence, her quiet wisdom, the delicate balance between father and son had tipped into something unrecognizable. I'm Richard Calloway. I'm 68 years old. I worked for 43 years as a structural engineer for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. I helped design bridges that thousands of people cross every day without a second thought. I raised a son alone after my wife died. I paid off my mortgage. I saved for retirement. I did everything right. And for 18 years, I was a ghost in my own family. Until last October, when my phone rang with a number I still had memorized after all this time. "Dad?" The voice was deeper, more weathered than I remembered, but instantly recognizable. "It's Michael. I think we should talk." What he meant was, I'd seen his name in the Boston Globe. I'd made some investments decades ago, quiet ones, careful ones. And now my net worth had 7 digits, and suddenly I wasn't dead anymore. I'm not a vengeful man. At least, I never thought I was. But 18 years is a long time to think about what you'd say if you ever got the chance. This is the story of what happened next. The coffee shop Michael suggested was in Cambridge, one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls and baristas with elaborate tattoos. When I walked in, I instantly felt out of place in my button-down shirt and sensible winter coat. The clientele was young, hip, tapping away at laptops while sipping $8 lattes. I spotted him immediately. My son. 50 years old now, with threads of gray in his dark hair, my hair, before mine went completely white. He was wearing an expensive-looking wool coat and checking his phone, one leg bouncing nervously under the table. For a moment, I just stood there, taking him in. The last time I'd seen him had been at his third business's bankruptcy hearing. He'd been 32 then, angry and desperate. Now he looked successful. Polished. The kind of man who belonged in places like this. "Michael," I said, approaching the table. He looked up, and something flickered across his face, recognition mixed with something else. Calculation, maybe. He stood, awkwardly extending his hand. "Dad. You look good." We shook hands like business associates, not like father and son who hadn't seen each other in nearly 2 decades. "You too," I said, sitting down across from him. The chair was uncomfortable, all style and no substance. Kind of like our reunion. A tattooed young woman approached to take my order. I asked for black coffee. Michael had some complicated concoction in front of him that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. "So," I said after she left, "you wanted to talk?" Michael fidgeted with his cardboard coffee sleeve. "Yeah. I. I've been thinking a lot about family lately." "I bet you have," I thought, but didn't say. "I saw the article," he continued, "about the bridge project and your investment in that tech company. Sounds like things have worked out well for you." The article. 3 weeks ago, the Globe had run a story about a bridge I'd helped design back in the 80s that was being renovated. They'd mentioned that I'd invested early in a software company that had recently gone public. The reporter had done some digging and estimated my net worth at just over $2.3 million. Not quite accurate, but close enough. After decades of careful saving, smart investments, and living below my means, I'd built something substantial. Something I'd once hoped to share with my son, before he told me I was dead to him. "I've been fortunate," I said neutrally. Michael nodded, took a sip of his coffee. "Look, Dad, I know things ended badly between us. But that was a long time ago. People change. I've changed." The barista brought my coffee. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, feeling the heat seep into my perpetually cold fingers. Arthritis. One of the many joys of aging alone. "How have you changed, Michael?" He launched into his story then. How after our falling out, he'd finally gotten serious. Gone back to school. Gotten an MBA. Started a financial consulting business that was now quite successful. Married a woman named Jennifer. Had 2 children, my grandchildren, that I'd never met. Ethan, 16, and Sophia, 14. "They're great kids," he said, showing me photos on his phone. "Smart. Good students. Ethan's on the debate team. Sophia plays violin." I looked at their faces, these strangers who shared my blood, and felt a complicated knot of emotions: longing, anger, grief, wonder. "They look like good kids," I said, handing the phone back. "They are." Michael paused, then said what he'd really come to say. "We'd like you to come to Christmas dinner this year. Meet the family. Start fresh." I took a long sip of my coffee, letting the bitter liquid burn down my throat. "That's very generous of you," I said carefully. Michael leaned forward. "Look, Dad, I know what you're thinking. And yes, seeing that article made me realize I'd made a mistake cutting you off. But it's not about the money. It's about Ethan and Sophia growing up without their grandfather. It's about healing old wounds before it's too late. Before it's too late. Because I was 68, and who knew how many Christmases I had left? I need some time to think about it," I said. Disappointment flashed across his face, quickly masked. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But Christmas is only 2 months away, so let me know if you're going to share your fortune with the grandchildren you've never met." "I'll call you," I said, standing up. I'd finished my coffee, and suddenly I needed fresh air. The coffee shop felt stifling, its hipster ambience a stark backdrop to the raw, jagged edges of our estrangement. "Dad," Michael said as I put on my coat. "I really am sorry." "For what it's worth." I looked at my son, this middle-aged stranger with my eyes in his mother's chin, and nodded once. "I'll call you," I repeated, and walked out into the crisp October air. I didn't call him. Not right away. Instead, I went home to my condo in Beacon Hill, a place I'd bought 5 years after Michael cut me off, when I finally accepted that I wouldn't need the extra bedrooms for grandchildren visiting on weekends. It was a nice place. Not flashy, but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a study where I kept my books and drafting table, a small balcony overlooking a quiet street lined with maple trees. I'd filled it with furniture I actually liked, not the floral-patterned sofa Margaret had insisted on or the uncomfortable dining set we'd received as a wedding gift. Just simple, solid pieces in dark wood and soft leather. I made myself a sandwich for dinner and ate it standing at my kitchen counter, looking out at the city lights coming on as dusk settled. Then I poured myself 2 fingers of Glenlivet, my one real indulgence, and went to the spare bedroom I'd converted into a home office. The filing cabinet in the corner contained 18 years of financial records, neatly organized and labeled. But it also contained something else, a manila folder labeled simply Michael. Inside were newspaper clippings about his business ventures, both the failures and the successes. A printout of his wedding announcement from the Globe's website. The occasional mention of him in business journals or local news. And most recently, a detailed report from a private investigator I'd hired 3 years ago. Not because I was planning anything. Just because I needed to know if he was okay. The PI had been thorough. Michael's financial consulting business, Callaway Financial Services, was indeed successful, but not as successful as he'd implied. They were comfortable, upper middle class, with a nice colonial in Wellesley worth about $1.2 million, carrying a mortgage of $780,000. Private school tuition for both kids, $96,000 per year. Country club membership. 2 luxury cars. 3 credit cards near their limits. The PI had noted in his report, subject appears to be living beyond means. Estimated annual income versus expenditures suggests deficit spending of approximately $70,000 to $90,000 per year. Living beyond his means. Some patterns never change. I took a sip of scotch, feeling the pleasant burn. Then I powered up my computer and typed Michael Callaway Boston into the search bar. His company website appeared first, professional, slick, promising personalized financial solutions for high-net-worth individuals. There he was on the About page, smiling confidently in an expensive suit, the Boston skyline behind him. I scrolled through, reading testimonials from satisfied clients. I found his LinkedIn profile, his company's Better Business Bureau rating, a mention in Boston Magazine's Top Financial Advisors list from 3 years ago. Then I found something more recent. A complaint filed with the Massachusetts Securities Division 6 months ago, alleging that Michael had mismanaged a client's retirement portfolio, resulting in significant losses. The case had been settled out of court. I dug deeper. 2 more complaints, both settled quietly. Nothing that had made the news, but enough to establish a pattern. Then I found the Yelp reviews. Most were positive, but there were a few 1-star ratings with concerning comments. Pushed high commission products that weren't right for my situation. Seemed more interested in how much I was worth than in my actual financial goals. Beware focuses on wealthy clients and ignores others. I leaned back in my chair, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. My son, the financial advisor who prioritized wealthy clients. Who was living beyond his means. Who suddenly wanted to reconnect after learning his estranged father was worth millions. The timing wasn't subtle. I pulled out my phone and looked again at the photos he'd shown me. My grandchildren. Ethan had Margaret's eyes. Sophia had her smile. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine what it would be like. Christmas dinner with family. Grandchildren opening presents I'd chosen. Perhaps summers at the Cape, teaching Ethan to sail like I taught Michael. Attending Sophia's violin recitals. Being a grandfather. But then I remembered standing in my living room 18 years ago, the phone heavy in my hand, my son's voice cold as he told me I was dead to him. All because I wouldn't give him more money to lose. I finished my scotch and closed the folder. Then I picked up my phone. Michael? It's Dad. About Christmas dinner. I'd like to come. Over the next 6 weeks, Michael and I established a cautious relationship. We met for coffee twice more. He called weekly with updates about the kids, about holiday plans, about how excited everyone was to finally meet me. I listened and nodded and asked appropriate questions. I didn't mention what I'd found online. I didn't ask about his business or his finances. When he hinted about my investments, I changed the subject. Meanwhile, I put certain plans in motion. First, I consulted my attorney, James Porter, who'd been handling my affairs for 20 years. I updated my will. I made some calls to old colleagues. I did some research of my own. The day before Christmas Eve, I stood in my bedroom, packing an overnight bag. Michael had invited me to stay in their guest room over Christmas, an offer I'd accepted after initial hesitation. "It'll give us more time together," he'd said. "And the roads can be treacherous if it snows." I folded a sweater Margaret had knitted for me decades ago, dark green wool that had somehow survived the years without moth holes or significant wear. I packed my toiletries, medications, reading glasses, and a copy of the latest John Grisham novel. Then I opened my safe and removed 3 items, a small gift-wrapped box for each of my grandchildren, and a manila envelope containing documents. The drive to Wellesley took 40 minutes in light holiday traffic. Michael's house was exactly as the PI's photos had shown, a stately colonial with black shutters and a red door, professional Christmas decorations adorning the porch and front yard. A luxury SUV and a sleek sedan sat in the circular driveway. I parked my 10-year-old Volvo behind them and sat for a moment, gathering myself. Then I grabbed my bag, the gifts, and the envelope, and walked to the front door. Michael answered on the second ring, wearing a cashmere sweater and pressed slacks, a glass of something amber in his hand. "Dad! You made it!" His enthusiasm seemed genuine, if slightly amplified by whatever he was drinking. "Merry Christmas," I said, stepping inside to the scent of pine and cinnamon and roasting meat. The house was a showcase, professionally decorated for both the holiday and everyday living. Cathedral ceilings, hardwood floors, artwork that looked expensive but impersonal. It reminded me of a high-end hotel lobby, beautiful but without character. "Let me take your coat," Michael said. "Jennifer. Kids. Grandpa's here." Grandpa. The word felt foreign, unearned. A slender blonde woman appeared from what I assumed was the kitchen, wiping her hands on a festive apron. "Richard. Finally. We've heard so much about you these past few weeks." Only these past few weeks, I thought but didn't say. Jennifer was pretty in an artificial way, 2 white teeth, 2 smooth forehead, hair too perfectly highlighted. She hugged me with the practiced warmth of someone who'd excelled at sorority rush. "The famous engineer. Michael says you built half the bridges in Boston." "That's an exaggeration," I said. "But I did help design a few that are still standing." "And made a fortune in tech investments," she added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How impressive." Before I could respond, 2 teenagers appeared at the top of the sweeping staircase. They descended with the reluctance typical of their age, clearly having been summoned rather than coming eagerly. "Ethan, Sophia, this is your grandfather," Michael said. "My father, Richard." They mumbled appropriate greetings. Ethan, lanky and already taller than his father, gave me a limp handshake. Sophia, petite with her mother's blonde hair, offered a half-hearted hug that barely made contact. "I brought you each something," I said, holding out the wrapped packages. "An early Christmas gift." That perked them up. Teenagers might be sullen, but free stuff still held appeal. "Can we open them now?" Sophia asked her father. Michael looked at me. "It's up to Grandpa." That word again. So strange in his mouth. "Go ahead," I said. "They're nothing extravagant. Just a small welcome gift." They tore into the packages with more enthusiasm than they'd shown for meeting me. Ethan's contained a vintage compass in a polished wooden box, the same one my father had given me when I was his age. Sophia's held a delicate silver locket that had belonged to Margaret. "It was your grandmother's," I told her as she examined it with mild interest. "She would have wanted you to have it." "Thanks," she said, not meeting my eyes. "It's old-fashioned. But cool." "The compass is actually pretty sick," Ethan admitted, turning it over in his hands. Does it really work? It does, I said. It's gotten me through many hiking trips without getting lost. You hike? He asked, surprise evident in his voice, as if 68-year-olds were too decrepit for outdoor activities. I still do. There's a group of us who go out every month. Old engineers who refuse to admit we're old. That earned me a genuine smile, the first real one I'd seen in this house. Dinner's almost ready, Jennifer announced. Ethan, show your grandfather to the guest room. Michael, can you help me in the kitchen? As Ethan led me upstairs, I caught a glimpse of Michael and Jennifer in an intense whispered conversation, their heads close together, her hand gripping his arm. I didn't need to hear the words to recognize the body language of a marital disagreement. The guest room was like the rest of the house, expensively furnished but impersonal. King-sized bed with too many decorative pillows. Ensuite bathroom with marble countertops. Windows overlooking the manicured backyard with its dormant swimming pool covered for winter. The Wi-Fi password is on the desk, Ethan said, hovering in the doorway. Dinner's usually around 7. Thank you, I said, setting my bag on the luggage rack. That compass belonged to your great-grandfather. He was a navigator in the Navy during World War II. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. For real? That's pretty cool. For real, I confirmed. He used it on a destroyer in the Pacific. Said it saved his life more than once. He fingered the compass in his pocket. I didn't know that part of our family history. There's a lot you don't know, I said gently. Maybe we can change that. He nodded, a touch awkwardly, then retreated to the sanctuary of his room across the hall. I unpacked my few items, placing the manila envelope in the bedside drawer. Then I washed my face, straightened my sweater, and headed downstairs to begin the performance of playing Happy Family. Dinner was a strained affair, despite everyone's efforts to pretend otherwise. We sat around a dining table that could comfortably seat 12, though there were only 5 of us, surrounded by fine china, crystal glasses, and silverware that looked rarely used. Jennifer had prepared a crown roast of lamb, impressive but pretentious for Christmas Eve, which in my family had always been a simple affair of pasta and seafood, honoring Margaret's Italian heritage. But those traditions had apparently been discarded along with me. Michael kept refilling his wine glass while peppering me with questions about my investments, my retirement accounts, my condo's value. Each time, I deflected gently, turning the conversation to the children or to neutral topics like the Patriots' chances in the playoffs. Dad was always good with money, Michael told Jennifer, as if the past 18 years hadn't happened. Taught me everything I know about investing. I nearly choked on my lamb. If he'd learned from me, he would have known that living within your means was the first principle of financial security. Not everything, apparently, I said mildly. Your business seems to have succeeded beyond anything I ever accomplished. Jennifer beamed. Michael's clients adore him. He has a waiting list of people wanting his services. Is that so? I took a sip of water. What's your specialty, Michael? Retirement planning? Estate management? A flicker of wariness crossed his face. We offer comprehensive services. But yes, estate planning is a significant part of what we do. Especially for clients in their later years. Clients like me, he meant. Fascinating, I said. I've been handling my own finances for so long, I've never considered using a professional service. You should consider it, Dad, Michael said earnestly. Estate taxes can be brutal without proper planning. And I'm sure you want to make sure your assets go where you intend. To him, he meant. I have given it some thought recently, I admitted. In fact, I've made some significant changes to my estate plan this month. The table went silent. Even the teenagers looked up from their phones, sensing the sudden tension. Changes? Michael's voice was carefully neutral. What kind of changes? I smiled. Nothing you need to worry about tonight. It's Christmas Eve. Let's enjoy the holiday. Jennifer quickly changed the subject to the Christmas Day menu, but I could feel Michael's eyes on me throughout the rest of the meal, calculating, reassessing. After dinner, the kids disappeared upstairs, and Jennifer excused herself to finish some wrapping. Michael and I moved to his study, a room clearly designed to impress clients, with leather-bound books on shelves, many with uncracked spines, framed financial certifications on the walls, and a heavy mahogany desk. He poured us each a glass of expensive bourbon and settled into one of two leather armchairs by a gas fireplace that ignited with the flip of a switch. "I'm glad you're here, Dad," he said, swirling the liquor in his glass. "It means a lot to the kids." The kids who'd barely spoken to me and had retreated to their rooms at the first opportunity. "They seem like good kids," I said. "Smart. You've done well with them." Michael nodded, taking a long sip. "We've given them everything. The best schools, music lessons, sports, vacations. Everything I didn't have growing up." The comments stung. Michael had hardly grown up deprived. We weren't wealthy, but he'd never wanted for anything important. Margaret and I had made sure of that. "You had what you needed," I said quietly. "And a few things you wanted." "Sure, but not like this." He gestured around the room, at the trappings of wealth. "I wanted my kids to have advantages." "And those advantages are important to you?" "Of course. Isn't that what every parent wants? To give their children more than they had?" I studied my son's face, the face I'd once known better than my own. When had he become so fixated on material things? Had it always been there, and I'd been too blind to see it? Or had something changed after Margaret died? "What I wanted," I said carefully, "was for you to be a good man. To be honest, hardworking, and kind. To find work that fulfilled you and people who loved you for yourself, not what you could give them." Michael's expression hardened slightly. "And you think I haven't done that?" "I think you've created a life that looks impressive from the outside. Whether it fulfills you, only you can know." He drained his glass and set it down with a sharp click. "Look, Dad, I know what you're thinking. That I only reached out because of the money. And yes, seeing that article made me realize what a mistake I'd made, cutting you off all those years ago. But it's not about your money. Isn't it?" I asked gently. "You've asked more questions about my investments than about my life in the 18 years we've been apart." His face flushed. "That's not fair. I'm a financial advisor. It's natural for me to be curious about how much your potential inheritance might be." The words hung in the air between us. Michael stared at me, then let out a humorless laugh. "Wow. You really think the worst of me, don't you? After I invited you into my home? Introduced you to my family?" "I think," I said carefully, "that you're in financial trouble. That you've been living beyond your means for years. That you have a pattern of mismanaging clients' money. And that suddenly reconnecting with your millionaire father seemed like a convenient solution." He stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment or both. "You don't know anything about my life. You've been gone for 18 years. Not by my choice," I reminded him. "You told me I was dead to you. Because you refused to help me when I needed it most." "I refused to throw good money after bad," I corrected. "You'd already lost nearly $100,000 of my money on failed ventures. You had no business plan, no experience, just big dreams and bigger promises. And when I suggested you start smaller, work your way up, you accused me of not believing in you." "You didn't," he spat. "I believed in hard work and earning your success," I said, remaining seated, keeping my voice level. "I believed those values would serve you better than easy money. I was trying to be a good father." Michael paced the room, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his teenage self that it made my chest ache. "So what now?" he finally asked. You came here just to accuse me of being after your money? To ruin Christmas? No. I set my barely touched bourbon on the side table and stood. I came because, despite everything, you're my son. And those kids upstairs are my grandchildren. I've lost 18 years with all of you. I don't want to lose whatever time I have left. Some of the tension left his shoulders. So you're not cutting us out of your will or something? And there it was. The real concern. My estate plans are my business, I said. But I suggest we table this discussion until after the holidays. For now, let's just try to be a family again. Or at least start moving in that direction. Michael nodded, though I could see the calculations still running behind his eyes. Right. Of course. It's Christmas. Indeed it is, I said. And I'm rather tired from the drive and the excitement. If you don't mind, I think I'll turn in early. Sure, Dad. Whatever you need. He forced a smile. Breakfast is usually around 8. The kids will want to open presents right after. I nodded and headed upstairs, feeling his eyes on my back. In the guest room, I changed into pajamas and sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly bone-weary. From the bedside drawer, I removed the manila envelope and spread its contents on the bed. Property records. Bank statements. Credit reports. The comprehensive financial picture of my son's life that the PI had compiled and I had updated through my own research. Michael Calloway was $1.3 million in debt, not counting his mortgage. His business was under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for possible fraud. 3 clients had filed complaints in the past year. He was desperate. And desperate people make dangerous choices. I gathered the papers, returned them to the envelope, and placed it back in the drawer. Then I turned out the light and lay in the dark, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of my son's house, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake by coming here. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, with a dusting of fresh snow that made the neighborhood look like a holiday card. I woke early, as I always did, and lay for a while watching the pale winter light filter through unfamiliar curtains. From down the hall came the sounds of the household stirring, a shower running, footsteps, the distant murmur of voices. I rose, dressed in comfortable slacks and a holiday sweater, another of Margaret's creations, this one with a subtle pattern of snowflakes, and made my way downstairs. The kitchen was empty, though the coffee maker had been set and was just finishing its brew cycle. I poured myself a cup and stood by the French doors overlooking the backyard, watching a cardinal flit between snow-laden branches. Oh. You're up early. I turned to find Jennifer in the doorway, already perfectly coiffed and dressed in a festive red sweater and white slacks, not a hair out of place despite the early hour. Old habits, I said, raising my coffee cup in greeting. Never could sleep past 6, even on holidays. Michael's the same way, she said, moving to pour her own coffee. Up with the birds, checking markets in other time zones. An awkward silence fell. Jennifer busied herself with cream and sugar, stirring with precise movements. Thank you for having me, I said finally. It's a beautiful home you have. Thank you. Her smile was polite but guarded. We've worked hard for it. Another silence. Then. Look, Richard, I want to be direct. Michael told me about your conversation last night. Of course he had. I see, I said neutrally. Jennifer set her coffee down and faced me squarely. Michael made mistakes when he was younger. He's admitted that. But he's built something real here, a successful business, a beautiful family. He's not the same person who had those failed startups. I'm glad to hear it. What I'm trying to say, she continued, is that his reaching out wasn't just about money. He genuinely wants to rebuild your relationship. For the kid's sake, if nothing else. I took a thoughtful sip of coffee. And what about you, Jennifer? What do you want? Her perfectly composed expression flickered for just a moment. I want my family to be happy and secure. I want my children to know their grandfather. And yes, I want my husband to have closure on a painful chapter of his life. All admirable goals, I said. Though I notice financial security features prominently. A flash of irritation crossed her face. Is that so wrong? To want security for your family? Not at all. It's what I wanted for Michael too. Which is why I refused to fund his third failing business and suggested he learn to stand on his own feet first. Her lips thinned. That's ancient history. 18 years, I agreed. Not so ancient. But yes, in the past. Footsteps on the stairs interrupted whatever she might have said next. Ethan appeared, still in pajamas, his hair sticking up at odd angles. Morning, he mumbled, making a beeline for the refrigerator. Is there food? The tension broke. Jennifer switched smoothly to mother mode, offering to make pancakes. I retreated to the family room with my coffee, giving them space. The Christmas tree dominated the room, at least 9 feet tall and decorated in a coordinated theme of silver and blue, beautiful but impersonal, like everything else in the house. Beneath it sat piles of wrapped presents, far more than seemed reasonable for a family of 4. Michael appeared, dressed casually but expensively in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. "Merry Christmas, Dad," he said, his tone deliberately light, as if our conversation the previous night hadn't happened. Sleep well? Well enough, I said. The guest room is very comfortable. He nodded, then lowered his voice. Look, about last night. I'd had a few drinks, and things got out of hand. Can we just start over today? Enjoy Christmas? I studied my son's face, so like mine at that age, yet somehow a stranger's. Of course, I said. It's Christmas. Relief washed over his features. Great. The kids will be down soon, and then we can open presents. Soon enough, we were all gathered around the tree. Sophia had appeared, looking remarkably like her mother in a matching red sweater. Jennifer distributed presents with the efficiency of an assembly line supervisor, and the living room quickly became a sea of torn wrapping paper. The gifts were extravagant. Ethan received a new laptop, wireless headphones, designer sneakers, and various smaller items. Sophia unwrapped a real pearl necklace, an iPhone upgrade, and clothes from brands I'd seen advertised in glossy magazines. Michael and Jennifer exchanged equally lavish gifts, a new golf club set for him, a diamond tennis bracelet for her. I sat quietly, sipping my second cup of coffee, watching the performance of abundance with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. None of the gifts seemed particularly meaningful or personal. It was as if they'd been selected from a catalog of appropriate expensive items rather than chosen with genuine thought. Wait, there's one more, Jennifer said, reaching far back under the tree. She pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped box and handed it to me. This is from all of us. Surprised, I took it. I hadn't expected a gift, given the hastily arranged reunion. You shouldn't have, I said automatically. Open it, Michael urged, an odd intensity in his voice. I carefully removed the wrapping to reveal a velvet jewelry box. Inside was a gold watch, expensive, Swiss-made, with complications that probably required a manual to understand. It's very nice, I said, examining it. Thank you. Turn it over, Michael said. Engraved on the back was a simple message, to Dad. Time to make up for lost time. Something about the inscription felt off, calculated rather than heartfelt. But I smiled and thanked them again, slipping it onto my wrist to replace my trusty old Timex. We have one more surprise, Michael announced, exchanging a look with Jennifer. Dad, we'd like you to come on our family vacation next month. We're going to the Cayman Islands for 2 weeks. All expenses paid. Our treat. The Cayman Islands. Known for their beaches, luxury resorts, and offshore banking. That's very generous, I said carefully. But I'm not sure my schedule will allow. We've already booked the villa, Jennifer interjected. 5 bedrooms, private beach, staff. The kids are out of school that week for winter break. And I know retirees have flexible schedules, Michael added with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I could feel the pressure building, the careful maneuvering to get me away from home, into their territory. To discuss my estate planning in a relaxed setting, no doubt. Perhaps to introduce me to a friendly offshore banker. I'll have to check my calendar, I said noncommittally. But it's a lovely invitation. A flash of frustration crossed Michael's face before he masked it. Of course. Just let us know soon so we can finalize the arrangements. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of activity. Jennifer prepared an elaborate Christmas brunch. The kids retreated to their rooms with their new possessions. Michael made several urgent business calls, despite it being Christmas Day. I sat at the kitchen island, watching Jennifer coordinate the meal with military precision, and thought about Margaret. About how our Christmases had been chaotic and imperfect but warm. How we'd laughed over burned rolls and lumpy gravy. How Michael, as a child, had been more excited about the family time than the presents. When had that changed? When had my son become this person who valued things over connection? Who saw relationships, even with his father, as transactions? After brunch, while the others were occupied, I slipped back upstairs to the guest room and retrieved the manila envelope from the drawer. Then I made my way to Michael's study and sat in one of the leather armchairs, waiting. It didn't take long. Michael appeared in the doorway, a forced smile on his face. There you are. Jennifer's setting up a movie in the family room if you're interested. Actually, I said, I was hoping we could talk privately. Wariness flashed across his features, but he nodded, closing the door behind him. What's on your mind? I gestured to the chair opposite mine. Please, sit. He did, perching on the edge as if prepared to flee. I've been thinking about what you said last night, I began. About how you've changed. About wanting to reconnect for the family's sake. Hope flickered in his eyes. Yes? And I've been watching today. This beautiful house. The expensive gifts. The vacation invitation. It all speaks to a certain lifestyle. We've done well, he said defensively. I told you, my business is under investigation by the SEC, I finished for him. The color drained from his face. What? I opened the envelope and removed a printout of an SEC filing. Case number 28764B, opened 3 months ago after multiple client complaints about mismanaged funds. How did you? I also have your credit reports, I continued, removing more papers. 3 cards maxed out. A home equity line of credit at 80% utilization. 2 personal loans totaling $340,000. Michael's expression hardened. You investigated me? What gives you the right? The school tuition is behind by 1 semester, I pressed on. The country club has sent 3 warning letters about unpaid dues. And your mortgage has been refinanced twice in 5 years, pulling out every bit of equity each time. He stood abruptly. This is a violation of privacy. These are confidential. You're drowning, Michael, I said quietly. And you saw me as a life raft. For a long moment, he just stared at me, his face a battlefield of emotions, anger, shame, calculation, defiance. Then something seemed to break. He sank back into the chair, shoulders slumped. You don't understand, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Things got out of control. The market turned. Clients were demanding returns I couldn't deliver. I had to take risks to keep up. And now? He looked up, and for a moment I saw the frightened boy behind the man's face. Now I'm screwed. If the SEC investigation goes public, I'll lose my license. If I lose my license, I lose everything. The house, the kids' schools, all of it. Unless a wealthy father swoops in to save the day, I finished for him. He didn't deny it. How much? I asked. What? How much would it take to clear your debts and legal problems? Hope flickered in his eyes. About 2 million. Maybe a bit more with legal fees. Nearly everything I had. My entire life's work and savings. And then what? I asked. You continue living beyond your means? Make the same mistakes again? Anger flashed across his face. I'm not a child anymore. I made some bad decisions, but I can fix this if I just get another chance. The same words he'd used 18 years ago, when asking for money for his fourth failed business. Michael, I said gently, this isn't about money. It's about patterns. About choices and consequences. About the example you're setting for your children. Don't bring my kids into this, he snapped. They're already in it, I countered. They're growing up watching you pretend to be wealthier than you are, prioritizing appearances over substance. They're learning that material things are how you measure success and worth. That's not true, he protested, but weakly. Isn't it? When was the last time you had a conversation with Ethan that wasn't about his achievements or possessions? When did you last ask Sophia about her dreams, not her grades or accolades? He had no answer. I leaned forward. You told me I was dead to you because I wouldn't give you money. You erased me from your life and your children's lives over money. And now you want me back because you need money again. It's not just about the money, he insisted, but his eyes couldn't meet mine. I believe you believe that, I said. But actions speak louder than words. And your actions show that relationships, to you, are transactional. People are valuable as long as they provide what you want. That's not fair. Perhaps not. But it's what I see. I gathered the papers and returned them to the envelope. I'm going to make you an offer, Michael. Not the one you were hoping for, but one I think you need. His expression guarded, he asked, what kind of offer? I won't bail you out financially. Not directly, anyway. But I will help you face this situation honestly and find a sustainable path forward. Meaning what, exactly? Meaning you need to downsize. Sell this house you can't afford. Move the kids to public schools, which are excellent in this district. Clear your debts methodically, even if it means bankruptcy. Rebuild your practice ethically, even if it's smaller and less flashy. His face darkened. You want us to be poor. To fail. No, I said firmly. I want you to be honest. With yourself, with your family, with your clients. I want you to redefine success based on integrity, not possessions. And if I refuse? If I don't want your help? I shrugged. Then we go back to being estranged. You tell your children whatever story you want about why their grandfather disappeared again. You continue down your current path until it inevitably collapses. And my estate goes entirely to charity when I die. The last sentence hit him like a physical blow. You'd really do that? Cut out your own grandchildren? My grandchildren have never known me, I reminded him. They won't miss what they never had. And based on this morning's display, they hardly need more material things. This is emotional blackmail, he accused. No, it's a choice. A fork in the road. I'm offering you a relationship, a real one, not based on financial rescue. I'm offering to be a father and grandfather, to share whatever time I have left. But not to be your bailout fund. Michael stood and paced to the window, staring out at the snowy yard. For a long time, he didn't speak. I let the silence stretch, giving him space to process. Finally, he turned back to me. What would this help of yours look like, exactly? A small opening. I'd take it. I'd connect you with a good bankruptcy attorney, one who specializes in financial professionals. I'd help you find a more affordable home. I'd work with you to develop a realistic budget. And yes, I'd set up modest college funds for Ethan and Sophia directly in their names, not accessible to you or Jennifer. And we'd have to give up everything? The house, the schools, the club? You're going to lose them anyway, I said gently. The question is whether you lose them catastrophically or in a controlled manner that preserves some dignity and stability. He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture again. Jennifer will never agree. Then perhaps Jennifer isn't the partner you need for the journey ahead. His head snapped up. What's that supposed to mean? Just an observation, I said. Marriages that are built on shared values survive hardship. Those built on shared consumption often don't. He laughed bitterly. So now you're a marriage counselor too? No. Just an old man who's seen a lot of life. Who made his share of mistakes but learned from them. Michael returned to his chair, sitting heavily. I don't know if I can do what you're asking. You can, I said with certainty. You're my son. Underneath all this, I gestured at the opulent room, is the boy Margaret and I raised. He's still in there somewhere. At the mention of his mother, Michael's expression softened. Mom would be disappointed in me, wouldn't she? She would be concerned, I corrected. But she never stopped believing in you. Neither have I, despite everything. He studied me, really looked at me perhaps for the first time since I'd arrived. You're serious about this, aren't you? This is a real offer, not just a way to punish me. I'm deadly serious. And it's not about punishment. It's about breaking a cycle before it breaks you and before you pass it on to your children. He was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then, I need time to think. To talk to Jennifer. Of course, I said, standing. I should probably head home anyway. Give you all some space. You don't have to leave, he protested, though without much conviction. I think it's best. You have important discussions ahead, and my presence would complicate things. I picked up the envelope. You know how to reach me when you've made a decision. I left him sitting there, staring at nothing, and went upstairs to pack my overnight bag. As I was placing my toiletries in their case, there was a soft knock at the door. Come in, I called. Ethan stood awkwardly in the doorway, the compass turning over and over in his hands. Are you leaving? Yes, I said. I think your parents need some time to talk about important matters. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. Will you come back? The question held more weight than his casual tone suggested. That depends on your father, I said honestly. But I'd like to. He and Mom were fighting, Ethan said abruptly. In their room. About money. They do that a lot, but they think we don't hear. I paused in my packing. I'm sorry you have to hear that. He shrugged with the practiced nonchalance of teenagers everywhere. Whatever. I'm used to it. He hesitated, then asked, Is it true you design bridges? I did, yes. I'm retired now. That's cool. I'm good at math and physics. Mom wants me to go into finance like Dad, but you have other interests? I suggested. He nodded. I like building things. Solving problems. Making stuff that lasts. My heart constricted. In that moment, he reminded me so much of myself at his age that it physically hurt. Engineering might be a good fit for you, then, I said. If you're interested, I could introduce you to some colleagues who could tell you more about the field. For the first time, he looked directly at me, hope evident in his eyes. Really? That would be awesome. Really, I confirmed. Regardless of what happens between your father and me, that offer stands. Thanks, Grandpa. The word sounded more natural coming from him than it had from Michael. I finished packing, said my goodbyes to Jennifer, cool but polite, and Sophia, disinterested but not unkind, and found Michael waiting by the front door. "I'll walk you to your car," he said. Outside, the winter afternoon was already fading toward dusk. Our breath formed clouds in the cold air as we stood by my Volvo. I meant what I said, I told him. The offer stands. Take some time, think it through. Michael nodded, hands thrust deep in his pockets. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For cutting you off all those years ago. It was wrong. Yes, it was, I agreed. But the past is past. What matters now is what happens next. You're not even a little bit tempted to just write a check and fix this, he asked, a hint of his old charm breaking through. It would be so much easier. Easier isn't always better, I said. Some lessons need to be lived through to truly learn them. He sighed. You always were stubborn. Another trait you inherited, I noted with a small smile. We stood in awkward silence for a moment, then Michael surprised me by stepping forward and embracing me briefly. Merry Christmas, Dad, he said. Merry Christmas, son, I replied. As I drove away, I watched in the rearview mirror as he stood in the driveway, a solitary figure against the backdrop of his too-big house with its perfect decorations and hidden financial rot. I didn't know if he would accept my offer. If our tentative reconnection would grow into something real or wither away again. If Jennifer would support a shift toward authenticity or cling to appearances until everything collapsed. But I had done what I could. Offered a hand, not a handout. Set boundaries while leaving the door open. The rest was up to him. 3 months later, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing the quarterly statements from the trust funds I'd established for Ethan and Sophia. Modest accounts, designed to grow steadily until they reached college age, with provisions that the money could only be used for education. My phone rang. Michael's number. Hello? Dad. His voice sounded different. Calmer, perhaps. More grounded. Are you free for lunch tomorrow? I could be, I said. Any particular occasion? We've found a house, he said. In Framingham. It's about half the size of the Wellesley place, but it's in a good school district. We're closing next month. A warmth spread through my chest. That's excellent news, Michael. Yeah, well. Turns out you were right. The SEC investigation was going to go public. I managed to settle with the affected clients, with some help from my attorney, the one you recommended. I've surrendered my licenses for 2 years, but there won't be criminal charges. And Jennifer? I asked cautiously. A long pause. She's adjusting. It hasn't been easy. But she's coming around. The kids are actually handling it better than we expected. Especially Ethan. He's a remarkable young man, I said. He reminds me a lot of you at that age. Michael laughed softly. Poor kid. No, I said firmly. Not poor kid. Lucky kid. Because his father is finding his way back to what really matters. Another pause. Then, quietly, I hope so, Dad. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do, I said. Try, learn, grow. Keep moving forward. So, lunch tomorrow? I thought maybe that Italian place Mom used to love. Antonelli's. Margaret's favorite restaurant, where we'd celebrated every anniversary for 20 years. I'd like that very much, I said, my voice thick with unexpected emotion. Great. Oh, and Dad? Easter's coming up in a few weeks. We were thinking, maybe you'd like to join us? Nothing fancy, just a simple family dinner. I'd be honored, I said. After we hung up, I sat for a long time at my kitchen table, watching the spring sunlight play across the hardwood floors. 18 years of estrangement. 3 months of cautious rebuilding. A lifetime of possibility ahead, however many years I had left. My son had said I was dead to him once. But people can come back from the dead, in a manner of speaking. They can find their way home if they're willing to walk an honest path. Money hadn't brought Michael back to me. In fact, it had nearly destroyed any chance of reconciliation. Only by refusing to make it about money, by focusing instead on values, on character, on the legacy beyond wealth, had we found a way forward. I picked up my phone again and sent a text to Ethan. Boston University's engineering department is having an open house next Saturday. Interested? His response came almost immediately, yes. Thank you, Grandpa. I smiled. Not dead after all. Very much alive, and with so much still to give that had nothing to do with money. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.